How can silence be the loudest sound in a room full of voices? That question followed me like a shadow the moment I stepped across the threshold. It had been 7 years since I last stood in this house. 7 years since I turned my back on the dinner table that always had a chair for everyone, except me. Tonight, nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The hallways still smelled like lemon polish and overcooked roast. The walls were still lined with fake smiles trapped in picture frames. And at the far end of the table, her chair, the one that once held my grandmother's quiet warmth, her soft humming, the rhythmic click of her knitting needles that could calm an earthquake, the chair she never missed a meal in, now left vacant, like her memory had been swept aside with the crumbs. As I walked in, not a single head turned, not my mother's, not my father's, not even my sister's. They saw me, but not really. To them, I was still Kaylin, the leftover, the broke one, the girl who left with nothing and, in their minds, returned with even less. I stood in the doorway holding my coat closed just a second longer than necessary, not because I was cold, but because I knew the temperature in that room was about to shift. I stepped forward. The sound of my boots against the polished floorboards was too loud, like my presence alone was a disruption. No greeting, no hug. No, we missed you. Just the clinking of glasses and the scraping of forks and the subtle judgment hanging in the air like smoke. Then it came, the strike dressed as a joke. "Still taking the bus, Callan?" The words floated across the table like perfume laced with poison. It was Isolda, of course. Always first to cut. Always dressed like an apology wrapped in Chanel. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. And I didn't flinch. I just smiled back. The kind of smile you practice when you've been underestimated your entire life. Because what they didn't know was this. I hadn't come back for a meal. I hadn't come back for reconciliation. I came back to bury the silence. And the sound of it shattering would start with me. She raised her glass like a queen offering a toast, but her words sliced like glass. "To family," Isolda smiled, her voice warm and honeyed. "Even the ones who rise from the dead just in time for dinner." The room chuckled nervously. No one stopped her. No one ever did. It wasn't the first time Isolda used charm as a weapon. She knew how to make cruelty sound like conversation. And this was her stage. My mother, Delea, didn't even try to hide it. She turned to me slowly, eyes trailing from my boots up to my coat. Her lips curled, not quite a smile, more like a wince masked as politeness. "Still wearing that coat, Callan?" I glanced down at the soft charcoal cashmere. It was elegant, understated, timeless. But in this house, it wasn't about the fabric. It was about what it symbolized. Not flashy enough, not new enough, not them enough. "It's cashmere," I said calmly. Her brow lifted slightly. Vintage. That one word, dipped in silk, laced with venom. She didn't have to say the rest. The implication was clear. You still haven't made it, have you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the truth was, I hadn't come here to prove I belonged. I came to show them why I never did. The room was still buzzing with passive insults and pretend laughter when I reached for my glass of water. My fingers moved slowly, deliberate. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wasn't trying to show off. I was just thirsty. But as my sleeve slid back and the light from the chandelier struck the stone, everything stopped. The ring caught the light like it had been waiting for this moment. It didn't sparkle, it commanded. A diamond, oval cut, vintage setting, but not just any diamond. It was the kind that whispers legacy, the kind that only surfaces once in a generation, the kind that comes not from stores, but from stories. My mother's eyes widened before she could stop herself. My father blinked like dust had just hit him in the face. And Isolda froze, fork in hand, midair. No one spoke. No one blinked. So I looked down at the ring and ran my thumb along the setting. Then I said it quietly, casually. Oh, this, just something I picked up on a quiet Tuesday. Boom. The words didn't echo. They settled. Soft, precise, explosive. That was the first strike, and I didn't raise my voice. I didn't change my posture. I just let the silence do what they never let me do, speak. The silence after my words lingered thick as smoke, sharp as glass. Nobody dared speak. Nobody dared look at me. They didn't need to, because I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at her chair. It sat at the far end of the table, untouched, unacknowledged, unwelcome, like she never existed, like she hadn't raised 3 generations at this very table, like she hadn't fed them, prayed for them, bled for them. I saw the spot where her knitting needles once clicked against the wood, where she used to hum that old gospel tune, where she once called me her quiet hawk, watchful, sharp, silent, and true. Now there was nothing, no cushion, no plate, not even a folded napkin. So I asked, soft but steady, did no one set a place for her? That was all, just a question, but it landed like a slap, like thunder in a room that thought it was safe. My mother's fork paused mid-cut. My father pretended not to hear. Isolda blinked, looked away. Because the one name they'd hoped wouldn't come up tonight just came crashing through the ceiling. Grandma. There was a pause, one of those tight silences where even the chandelier seemed to hold its breath. Then, without looking up from her plate, my mother said it calm, clipped, clean. She's not coming back, Kaylin. No tremble, no sadness, just a flat fact served colder than the roast beef on her plate. I looked at her. Not in anger, not in disbelief, just disappointment. The kind that doesn't shout, it sighs. I could feel something shift under my ribs. The space where grief used to live was now fire. So I answered, voice low but steady, neither am I. Not if this is how you choose to remember her. That line didn't rise in pitch, it didn't waver, but it landed like a gavel. The table went still. Not even the forks dared move. I wasn't trying to make a scene. I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just done pretending. That was the beginning of the quiet war. Not a war with fists, but with truth. And truth, when spoken by the silenced, can be terrifying. I blinked, and suddenly I wasn't at that table anymore. I was 17 again, in the old kitchen, the one with the flickering light bulb that buzzed louder than any conversation. It was winter, the kind that crept under the door and settled in your bones. She was at the table, wrapped in that lavender shawl with the tiny pearls she had sewn in by hand, Grandma Liza. Her hands trembled that night, too weak to hold a spoon. So I sat beside her, took the bowl of soup I'd made after a double shift at the diner, and fed her one quiet spoon at a time. I was exhausted. Every muscle in my body ached, but I didn't show it. She looked at me, eyes clouded with time, but filled with something clearer than anything else in my life. Love. Then she whispered, "One day they'll wait for you." I almost laughed. Me? The invisible one? She reached out, gently touched my wrist. "You give more than they'll ever admit, but you'll see, they'll learn." I didn't believe her then, but now, sitting at that table, watching them squirm around the truth they'd buried, I finally understood. She hadn't just seen me, she had seen who I would become. After the silence fell again, I excused myself. No one tried to stop me. They didn't care where I went, just that I stayed quiet. I walked toward the hallway, the one where the family photos used to hang. The moment I turned the corner, my breath caught. It hit me before my mind could even process it. Something was missing. I stepped closer, slowly, one frame at a time. No wedding photos, no Thanksgiving snapshots, No black and white shot of Grandma Liza in the rose garden, the one she used to say made her feel timeless? Gone. In its place, a full-size, glossy real estate ad. Isolda, front and center, arms crossed, Beverly Hills skyline behind her, smile full of teeth, slogan at the bottom, luxury, legacy, Langley. My mouth went dry. I scanned the rest of the wall. More of her, more slogans, more brand. Where was Grandma's cross-stitched proverb, the little embroidery that said, "Kindness is never wasted"? Gone too. Replaced by a plaque showing Dad's golf trophy stats. And that's when I realized this wasn't remodeling. This was erasure. Deliberate, calculated, cold. They didn't just forget her. They rewrote the walls to make it look like she never mattered. Behind me, I heard the soft clack of heels. Isolda. She didn't need to say my name. Her presence always came with an announcement, even when she said nothing at all. She stopped just behind my shoulder, took a long sip of wine, then let the glass dangle from 2 fingers like it was part of her costume. "You ruined this house with your tears." Her voice was calm, controlled, like she'd rehearsed the line in front of a mirror 100 times, not to wound, but to erase. I turned slowly, met her eyes. There it was again, that smirk she wore like lipstick, painted on, fake, but this time I didn't swallow it. I didn't shrink. I spoke, soft, but sharp enough to cut through marble. No, I just refused to stell her for status. Silence. For a second, just one, that perfect mask on her face cracked. Not enough for others to see, but I saw it, because I knew what she feared most wasn't my grief. It was that I came back, not to cry, but to expose. I walked past her, past Isolda's perfect perfume and her hollow stares, down the length of the table toward the chair at the very end, the one no one dared sit in. Grandma Liza's chair. It stood there untouched, unacknowledged, like a ghost in plain sight. I reached into my coat pocket, fingers brushing velvet, and pulled out her lavender shawl. It still smelled like rose water, still carried the shape of her shoulders, still felt like her arms on rainy days. Without a word, I draped it across the back of her chair, smooth, gentle, like placing a crown on a forgotten throne. And then I sat down in the seat beside it. Silence. No one spoke. No one moved. They looked at the shawl as if it might burst into flame, but no one dared touch it, because deep down, they all knew. She wasn't the one who didn't belong. They were. Her voice sliced across the table like a blade dipped in honey. You didn't come back for her. You came back for the money. Everyone looked at me. Even the chandelier seemed to pause its crystals, holding their breath. I didn't flinch, not this time. I looked at her. The woman who gave birth to me, but never once asked if I felt safe in this world. The woman who forgot what grief looked like the moment it stopped being profitable. And I said calmly, "No." Then I leaned in just enough for her to see the truth in my eyes. I came to see if she was right about you. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't settle. It trembles. Because deep down, everyone wanted to know what had Grandma Liza seen that no one else had. The hallway was colder than I remembered. The light flickered, like it, too, was deciding whether to stay. I walked into her room, Grandma Liza's room. Still smelled like vanilla and old books. I opened the bottom drawer, slowly. Inside was a silk pouch tied with violet ribbon. I knew it before I touched it. I'd seen her hold it 100 times, but never open it. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I untied the ribbon, unwrapped the pouch. Inside, a small brass key. Old, worn, familiar. And folded next to it, a letter. On the front, only for Kaylin. I unfolded it. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. You were always the root pushing through concrete. I saw you even when they didn't. Use this when you're ready. Love, Liza. Silence again. But this time, it felt like a hug. The old key didn't open a box. It opened a war room. Not in the attic. Not in the cellar, but in a lawyer's office downtown, 3rd floor, behind frosted glass. I didn't go alone. Aunt Millie was waiting for me, and she looked like she'd been waiting for years. "You're ready?" she asked. I nodded. The lawyer unlocked a file drawer. What he pulled out changed everything. A sealed envelope. Inside, the real will. Notarized, signed, stamped. Not for Isolda. Not for my mother. Not even for the stepfather who smiled too much. It was for me. Because she trusted me. Because she knew. And then a stack of documents. Account transfers, checks, forgery notices, and one printed email. "If Callan finds out, we're done." From Isolda to Mom. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd tried to erase a legacy. I didn't cry, just whispered, "Let's get to work." The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. Their side walked in with swagger, mother in pearls, Isolda in crocodile heels. Stepfather nodding at the judge like they were golfing buddies. They submitted the will. Not a will, their will, with one footnote scribbled in legalese. Beneficiary Callan Langley removed due to mental instability. Mental instability. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase me again. But I came prepared. I stood up, slid the flash drive across the table. "May I play a recording, Your Honor?" The judge nodded. A pause. Then her voice clear, cold, calculated. "Don't tell Callan. She'll want her cut." Isolda. Caught. My mother's voice followed, "Just make sure the bank statements are shredded." The silence this time wasn't shocked. It was ash, because everything they built was now on fire. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of a gavel made of justice itself. After reviewing the authenticated documents and audio evidence, a pause. Even the lights seemed to dim. "This court rules in favor of Callan Langley." Silence. Then, "The submitted will is void. The original notarized will stands. Callan Langley is the sole beneficiary." No one moved. Isolda's smile froze midair. My mother's hand slipped off the table. The stepfather blinked twice like he didn't hear it right. But I heard it, clearer than any insult they ever threw at me. I was no longer the invisible girl. I was the heir, not just to the estate, but to the truth. The courtroom was silent. Not the tense kind of silence, but the kind that follows something irreversible. The judge leaned forward. "All parties involved in the fraudulent will, Isolda Langley, Rebecca Langley, and Richard Langley, are hereby ordered to return $216,000 to the estate." He paused. "Additionally, they are to cease all contact with Callan Langley, effectively, immediately." Isolda gasped. Mother lowered her eyes. Richard opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. No one objected. Not because they agreed, but because they had no ground left to stand on. And me? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood, silent, exactly like they used to want me to be. Only now the silence belonged to me. It wasn't held in a grand gallery. No champagne, no press, just an old greenhouse cleaned and repainted. Callan transformed it into something that felt like her grandmother's kitchen. The smell of lavender, handwritten recipes, tomato seeds taped to the wall. There was a rocking chair in the corner, and the purple shawl folded neatly over it. One wall displayed sketches, Liza's garden plans, her notes on heirloom seeds. Another held poems, some typed, some hand-scrawled, all of them filled with tenderness. In the center stood a table, not for wine or speeches, but for stories. Neighbors came, old friends, former students. One by one, they shared memories. She taught me to plant, but also how to listen. She saved my mother's house from foreclosure. She wrote me a letter every year I was in the military. The room didn't echo with applause, but it pulsed with love. And Kaylin, she didn't stand in front. She stood beside the stories, just like her grandmother would have wanted. One by one, they came forward. Not celebrities, not influencers, just people. Ordinary, grateful people. They walked to the front, nervous at first, then steadier with each word spoken. She paid my son's tuition. I never knew how she found out he was struggling. She dropped blankets off at shelters every winter. No tag, no name, just warmth. She helped my dad after his stroke, drove him to therapy for 6 months. She fixed the community garden fence without telling anyone. We just woke up and it was there. Liza Langley's name was once whispered in kitchens, spoken softly in schools, remembered in empty hospital hallways. Now it filled the room like a hymn. People cried, not for a legend, but for a woman who had made them feel seen. And in that moment, the Langley family wasn't the center of attention anymore. Kindness was. They came late, dressed in dark designer clothes, sunglasses still on, as if the truth wouldn't recognize them. Isolda's heels clicked sharply on the concrete floor. Delia held her purse like a weapon. The stepfather just stared, already red with fury. They didn't greet anyone. They didn't look at the displays. They looked for Callan. And Callan, she didn't flinch. She simply nodded to a nearby journalist who had been filming quietly. He stepped forward. "Mrs. Delia Shaw, do you confirm filing a forged will after your mother's passing?" The air thinned. Delia froze. I won't answer that. But someone in the crowd murmured, "You just did." Cameras clicked, reporters took notes. But Callan said nothing. She stood by the rocking chair, gently smoothing the purple shawl. The truth didn't need to scream. It only needed to stand still long enough for others to see it. There was no applause, no victory music, only the sound of dirt shifting beneath her hands. Callan knelt at the edge of the old garden bed, the one behind her grandmother's cottage, now overgrown and tangled with time. In her palm were tiny envelopes, each one marked by Liza's handwriting: tomatoes, mint, faith. Yes, she'd written faith. Callan smiled. Not the victorious kind, but the quiet kind that says, "I'm still here." She pressed each seed into the earth as if each one was a memory being replanted. It wasn't just gardening, it was a ceremony, a reclaiming, a resurrection. She didn't need a mansion. She didn't need a podium. This was her inheritance, and it would grow. The cottage in Montana was quiet, too quiet, to hold something worth $69 million. But it did. Behind an old tapestry, Kaylin found a small wooden box. No lock, no velvet, just a folded note, and a ring that shimmered like it carried lightning. Not just any ring, the blue Ophelia, rare, untouched, priceless. She unfolded the note written in her grandmother's delicate script. "Let them see it, but only you know its worth." Callan stared at the ring. She could already hear the voices. She wore that to dinner. Why would she give it to Callan? But Callan smiled. They would see the diamond. They would see the money. But they would never see what Callan saw. Nights spent holding her grandmother's hand. Tears wiped in silence. Strength born from invisibility. The ring wasn't wealth. It was memory. It was armor. And she would wear it. Not to flaunt it, but to remember. Callan didn't make headlines. There were no viral speeches, no vengeance dances, just quiet days, planting, writing, living. Sometimes a child from town would visit the garden. She'd hand them a tomato or a story. Once a reporter asked, "What made you fight them so calmly?" She smiled and whispered, "Justice doesn't always shout. It whispers through roots until it cracks the concrete." The camera caught that moment, but no one could capture what came after. The way the earth softened around her again, the way the wind carried her grandmother's laugh. Kaylin wasn't loud, she was true, and that was louder than anything. You don't have to scream to be heard. Real power often whispers, like roots breaking concrete slowly but surely. The ones the world underestimates are often the ones who hold the deepest truths. Kaling didn't need revenge. She needed only to stand firm, stay honest, and trust the quiet strength of truth. Life may silence your voice, but never let it steal your message. If Callan's story moved you, hit subscribe to join us for more quiet but powerful stories like this one. Every subscription is a whisper that says, I believe in truth, I believe in kindness, I believe in justice. Whispers of life, where silent stories echo the loudest.